All right. I think we're live, brother.
We are live, man. What's going on? How you doing?
Not much. Just we started a kickstart. So just kind of dealing with that kind of stuff right now and getting through the week, getting everybody onboarded and getting ready for tomorrow's orientation meeting, which is we're really excited about because it's all virtual. And we've got a couple things that are planned in the works that I think are going to kind of take it over the top this time around. So just kind of wrapping up that kind of stuff. And, we're in the groove now with homeschooling. So things are kind of grooving right now, so that they're kind of not on autopilot, but a lot better than the first week. So just project after project, man, just to kind of enjoying. I'm looking forward to later on this afternoon. Hopefully the air pollution is not in a position where we're not going to be able to go to the beach, because usually I like doing that on Thursdays just for a little mental space there. But yeah, man, doing good. How about you?
Yeah, actually, really doing good. It looks like you're frozen on my screen. Oh, there you are. You're back. It's always exciting when we start the Kickstart. There's always a lot of energy around that. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to, hopefully with the air quality has been clearing up the last couple of days. Hopefully we'll be able to get together on Sunday morning and do that outdoor kettlebell workout in the park Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Made it through the heat. I mean, the heat was ridiculous.
Brutal, man. Did your crops make it?
Yeah, I've got a lot of burned trees and stuff. Like, do you have burned stuff?
Oh yeah,
we've got terrible, man.
Burned trees. Usually it's like at the top of the trees and stuff like that. I've got a couple bougainvilleas that got burnt, and they just got burnt up.
We've got camellias where they do not like the direct sun like that, and they got gobbled up. They'll come back, but so between that and the air quality over the weekend it was so weird. It was just apocalyptic. It was orange outside. It was just, you'd walk outside and it was orange and strange, but the air quality's it improved yesterday. I haven't checked it yet today. Hopefully it's holding firm. So, and like always, I hope they're able to get get the fires under control, because it's craziness out there. But I think
we got to get our rakes out, man. We just got to start raking the floor.
Yeah, we got to rake however many millions of acres that we have in the state of California. Just get out and rake that. I had some interesting conversations about that very topic last week, and I won't talk about it on this phone call. It was just, I ended up doing quite a bit of research, and I also have, I know some people that are in that side of in that profession, in forestry and wildlife management.
Well, your brother, right?
Yeah. So I was able to talk with him about some stuff and kind of, separate truth from fiction. So it was really interesting to get an insider's take on everything. But one of the interesting things that I learned, and then we'll move on to the topic at hand, is that 57% of California's wildlands are owned by the federal government. So it's really their responsibility to manage 57% of the lands in the state of California. I could be wrong about that, but that was my understanding from an article.
57%, and the other the 40%, up to 40%, I was reading, is private land.
Yeah, a lot of it is private land. So it's complicated and it's complex, and that's a Meatheads talk for another day. So, But let's talk about this, because this is a really interesting topic, I think. And you and I have had offline conversations about this, but this last week took it to a new level. You reached out to me and you texted me and asked me if I had seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it had been showing up on my Netflix feed when I would log in, right there. Like in the prime position, like this is something you should definitely be watching based upon your habits or what you normally watch. Yeah. And I was like, this looks good. This looks good. And then you're like, you need to watch this. So I watched it, and very, very, very important very powerful, very impactful, to the extent that I decided to take a week off of social media. But we can talk about that later. And then just really recommending to everybody that they watch The Social Dilemma, because most of everything up until about the last 30 minutes, I already knew from other things that I had read. But it gave me a more in-depth perspective on how the whole, how technology has evolved and how it's grown and so on and so forth. The last 30 minutes were really, really interesting to me. And we'll dig into that in a second.
Yeah.
But
I'm
before
interested
we
to hear
get
that.
into all of that, I wanted to ask you, just as kind of a preface, what's your relationship with, how would you describe your relationship with social media?
I love hate. It's a love-hate relationship, I got to tell you. It is where I go to. Listen, we use social media a lot for business. I think in this day and age, it'd be really, really hard in my eyes to run any type of business without some sort of social media influence or some sort of social media outreach advertisement of some sort, because that's, at the end of the day, that's where your people are. That's the consumers that you want to reach out to, we want to bring into Arena Fitness. They live in these places, right? That's primarily where they spend the majority of their time. So as a business owner, you want to advertise in the areas that you can find your people, right? If everybody was down at the local car wash and I knew that the majority of my members went down the local car wash, then I would be advertising at the local car wash, right? So that's number one, why I use social media. The other outlet is really it's mundane. It's kind of like this little, I don't really know what I do on social media other than that I know I do this a lot. I find myself at times literally looking at Facebook or Instagram or anything like that and just mindlessly scrolling. So it's a love-hate relationship, because 5 minutes into just doing this, I hate myself. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And that's the love-hate relationship that I have with it. I love it because I know I get intrigued from the advertising standpoint. There's strategies involved in to try to, reach the people that you want to reach. And I hate it because it wastes my time. It really, really does. And I get nothing out of it, really. So it's a weird relationship and fascination that I have. And keep in mind, I was in the generation, I remember when Facebook was just a college application. So I also that's the generation, we grew up with that app. So that was the first app that we grew up with. So there's this kind of connection to it that I have that is that's weird. I don't know how else to kind of describe it. So that's my kind of take on it. That's my relationship with social media. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, for me, I would characterize it the same way. It's love-hate. There are aspects of it that I love. The business aspect of it is challenging because it does feel like we need to be there. And I don't even know that it is so much at this point for us a mechanism for driving new business, but what it is a really good way for us to communicate with people at scale, in a somewhat interactive way. So we're able to do that on our private Facebook group page, our community page, and generate some discussion. And listen, right now it is very important, because that is one of the few ways that we can actually interact with people, because we're still shut down in the city of LA. And so we're not interacting with our clients as much as we normally do unless we see them in a class or in a training session. We don't have a lot of social time with them, that we normally do. And so it is a very good mechanism for communication and also sharing of ideas and education. I really value it from that perspective, even though I don't think people use it enough for that. I think they use it more for kind of self-glorification, and this is how amazing my life is, and look at my car, and look at my abs, and look at my ass, and I'm amazing. Even though everybody's just as screwed up as everybody else, it's kind of like this platform for self-glorification, but it also has the potential of being a platform for education. And some people do use it very effectively for education. And so in that capacity, I value it because I think that it can be used effectively as an educational tool. But I do have a love-hate relationship with it myself too. And I find myself, another positive thing is it is kind of one of the few ways for me to stay a little bit in contact with people that I grew up with, that I'm maybe not great friends with. I may not see them with any regularity. They may not be part of the closer set of friends that I have, but I know them and they're cool, and it's it's a little bit of socializing with
Yeah.
with people that are outside of your main circle. But I find myself too often doing this too because I can, and and you get trapped, you get stuck in it, and that's when I hate myself. I'm fine if I jump in, I check something, I respond, I get out, but it's when I'm doing this and I find myself doing it and saying something like, just one more, like just one more minute,
Yeah.
or just, that's when you've got
Yeah,
a
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
You may not have an addiction, so to speak, but you've got a problem in that moment that you are not in control of your behavior for some reason. And there are some very, very good reasons for that, and based upon the um, how the technology is built. So I'm pretty sure it's very easy for people to go on and watch this movie. But can you give like a quick overview of what The Social Dilemma is as a documentary?
I mean, listen, the quickest overview I think that I could probably give is a little, well, let me just, I'm going to read to you. Sorry, hold on, wait a second. I'm going to read to you a little bit of the description that they have on Facebook, number one, which is can't stop looking at your phone. You're not alone. Well, I'm sorry, the obsessive appeal to of the social network, right? That's their description online.
Yeah.
But really what resonated in the description that I would probably give somebody is, if you wanted to hear directly from the people that created these platforms and really pioneered the internet as we know it, everything from engineers from Google to Yahoo to Twitter to Facebook, and people that were in positions of being responsible for growing this industry in its infancy stage, and hearing what they have to say about what's going on with the evolution of Facebook and the evolution of technology, and how that coincides with society. That's what this document is about. That's what this documentary is about. And when you hear it from those people, I think that that's what resonated with me the most, where it prompted me to go, you got to check this thing out. Like, wait a second. When the guy who's responsible for the like button is on there, and listen, that changed Facebook. I remember before there was a like button. That was really in its infancy stage. And when you hear from that guy and you hear the fear that he has about where this is going and how that's taken off, and what his intention was when he first adopted that idea to what it kind of developed now, that's some scary stuff, man. That's when you hear his worry, his anxiety about it, his struggles, his implementation of how he tries to get his kids off of it. And even, I don't think there was one guy on there or a person on there that didn't discuss their own personal addictions. Like, they were not immune to this. They had biohacked people's behaviors so much to the point where they pointed the gun at themselves, type of thing. And they even make that reference where he talks about how, we've taken these AI situation and we've literally pointed it back at each other and to be able to figure out what elicits a behavior or a response out of us, an emotional behavior. And we're pointing those things right at us and just taking taking notes on this huge experiment that we're all a part of. And that's scary, dude. That's like, okay, you made the gun and then you pointed it at yourself, and then you're now realizing that there's a gun pointed at your brain that you made and you're responsible for making, and now you want to speak out about it.
Right. And like the genie's out of the bottle now and you can't get it back in. And
No.
so what I was thinking is what we would kind of do is let's talk a little bit about like the technology aspect of it and how it was developed and that, what we learned about that. And then I want to talk about the personalization of content that influences the way that we think and the way that we, our values and our kind of our ideas and our political leanings and so on and so forth, and how we interact with other people. And then talk about maybe, are there any kind of solutions for this? So on the technology front, kind of picking up where you left off, this, from what I've read in other forums and in other books and such, and heard from this documentary, it really was, the genie kind of got out of the bottle. But listen, it wasn't designed at the beginning to be this thing that co-opted your ability to control your behavior. It was just a platform for sharing information, and it just spiraled out of hand, and it wasn't a devious thing. It wasn't like a malicious thing. And it brings to mind, and I don't remember exactly what it is or who said it, but it's something like every venture begins as a cause, turns into a business, and ends up a racket. And that's kind of like what happened here. It's like, this was this idea, and then it became a business, and now it's just a little bit scary. And it wasn't really intended that way. But, talking about some of the technology, what we're hearing from some of the people, and this, not just in this documentary, but in some of the books that I've read, is that it has been engineered specifically to capture your attention. So the notifications were something, for example, that a lot of the engineers and executives that were interviewed in the movie talk about. There's one of the first things they said was, disconnect your notifications. And there's an interesting quote from the book Indistractable, and the author Nir Eyal says, external triggers, so this is a quote, external triggers are cues in our environment that tell us what to do next, like the pings, dings, and rings that prompt us to check our emails, open a news alert, or answer a phone call. So these are intentional external prompts in our environment that are there to tell us what to do next. And according to Nir Eyal, he says, they can either result in traction or distraction, meaning, they're not necessarily all bad. They can remind you to do something productive, or they can take you off the path and become a distraction. But it is interesting, like these notifications that we get popping up on our laptops, on our phones, on our iPads. These are intentionally engineered to capture our attention and to get us to do something, and it's amazingly effective. Do you have your notifications turned off, or what do you do with your notifications?
As soon as I watched the movie, or the documentary, I started going through my notifications with a fine-tooth comb. So the only notifications, and I used to have Facebook notifications, I used to have Instagram notifications, I used to have news notifications. So now what I have is simply email notifications, and I think that's it. I think that we use that voicemail service for our gym. Anytime we field questions and stuff, or field calls, that we get notified that somebody's calling the gym and stuff. So I basically categorize my notification. If there's something that I need to tend to in business, then I'm going to allow that notification to come through. But if it's anything else beside, and if it doesn't fall into that criteria where I need to know, then I turn off the notification. So I went through all my apps, and I was surprised on how many apps actually had notifications that were on. And I just started going through each one of them and just pop, 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 and I turned them off. So the only time I ever get notified is because I need to get notified. I need to know when a client is calling the gym, or I need to know when somebody needs some help from, one of the members need help or a question or anything like that. I need to know those things, so I'm able to answer it in a timely manner. Outside of that, all my notifications have been turned off, which already the second I did it, I was like, oh, okay, I can disconnect a little bit. And listen, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I think it's important to talk about, this is not an all or nothing thing. Like we are, this is technology is so part of our life. You can't just go watch The Social Dilemma, let 100% of that sink in and go, I'm not going on the internet ever again. I think that there's a difference between scrolling on your news feed and mindlessly searching for things than, let's say, going into a group with like-minded people that is disseminating education and using the platform for education, and really filtering out who goes in and out of that group and almost creating a room. I think that there's a big difference between that and a general news feed. I think there's a big difference between allowing notifications that allow you to conduct your day-to-day life versus random notifications that are taking you away from your life. There's a distinction there that I don't think that was really clearly made in The Social Dilemma. That is, listen, you can't completely unplug from the internet. It's too much of a part of our life. It's impossible,
Look,
especially now.
There's a part of me that would like to. I'd like to be Henry David Thoreau and just kind of, go off into the woods and forget about everything. But you can't really do that. And that, I think, is kind of what Nir Eyal was talking about, when it can either be traction or distraction, and understanding the distinction between the two. With notifications, I actually haven't had any notifications for a long time, except for the bow tie, which is when we get notified that somebody has left a message on our voicemail at work, and text, and phone. I haven't had Facebook or Instagram or anything like that for a long time. Coach Catalyst I have, so that if there's a client issue that needs to be dealt with. I even have MyZone, which I could probably turn off, because nothing is going to be urgent for MyZone. So I can, but usually I just kind of swipe that away. But it's really interesting, though, because there was another interesting quote that I came across from a study from the Journal of Experimental Psychology, showed that receiving a phone notification but not responding was just as distracting as having taken the call, and suggests that the mere presence of a smartphone may produce limited capacity attentional resources, meaning just having your phone there can automatically create an attention deficit or an inability to remain focused. And even if a notification goes off and you don't check it, it still has an interruptive impact on what you're doing. So I think paring down really is smart. You got to get rid of the crap that you don't need,
Right. That's funny that you mentioned that, because that brings up Simon Sinek brings up this. He has this conversation on YouTube where he talks about the phone, right? And how many people, when they sit down at dinner, they have the phone facing up and they just place it right here. And that's their way of still kind of keeping an eye, but hey, I'm talking to you and we're having a conversation. And, you get distracted, you get pinged and stuff like that, and you get pulled away from the conversation. So the solution that people have is they just put it face down. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I'll just have it here, but I'll face it down instead,
right,
as if that's going to, not distract you as much. And that's their solution. And he talks about how that still is that distraction that you're talking about, that's still initiating that response and that in your brain. even just having it there, and you're not fully present with the person. And the solution really is, don't bring this to the table. Have it
Put
in
it
a
in a
different
drawer.
room.
Yeah, put it
Put
in
it
a
in a
drawer
drawer.
somewhere. Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to be able to disconnect and have that not distract you from where you're at. Because even if this thing were never to go off, and he talks about this in the video, and it's just sitting there, it's still sending you a signal of distraction. Even though it's not buzzing, you didn't get any notifications, you are not 100% in that conversation. You're not 100% present.
You
And
are
that,
not.
to
And
me,
that's
is really interesting. I mean,
it
like,
is. And watch how many people go into a full hyperventilating flop sweat when you suggest to them that they put their phone in a drawer for the evening or for a meeting. It
well,
is
that one scene in The Social Dilemma where that teenage girl, what, she lasted like what, 10 seconds, and
broke
she,
open the container. Yeah. I mean, that is absolutely amazing, but that's the way that people are. I mean, if you really just like, look, we're having a meeting, it's a 1 hour meeting. Like, turn your phone off. People are just like, oh my God, I can't. I mean, listen, and I don't want to point fingers. If I leave the house to go to the supermarket and I forget my phone, I turn around. I turn around and I get my phone. So I'm not any better than anybody else, although I have learned to turn it off and put it in a drawer at home. I also don't have kids that are outside the house that I would have to worry about checking, texts from. But the problem with a lot of like the
or
notifications and
even your
checking your,
wife, I go
yeah,
straight to like, what if my wife has a catastrophic, I go straight to death and apocalyptic situations. Like,
so do
I
I.
need to be
Right now, I don't need to worry about that because my wife and I are always together. So I don't have to, because we're still, in lockdown. But yeah, I absolutely do too. It's like now it's interesting because we made it through the majority of our lives without having that phone around, and everybody lived and everybody was fine. But now it's like, what if they call? Um, but it's interesting because with like the notifications and with our checking our phone constantly. Um, Another quote from the book Indistractable: the more we respond to external triggers, the more we train our brain in a never-ending stimulus response loop. So the more we respond to those notifications or to our phone, the more we're training our brain to do that. And so it's actually, we're developing a behavior when we do that. It's crazy, and it's really based upon the um, the concept of a slot machine. And there was a guy who wrote an article, and I wish I could remember what his name was. It would take me a second to find it, but if you Google slot machine in your pocket, you'll find the article. And he wrote this article about how smartphones are basically like having a slot machine in your pocket because they're engineered to do what are called intermittent positive reinforcement, which means that it's when you get a ding or you get a like or you get a response on your social media platform or whatever, it's not a predictable response, and it's not the same reward over and over and over. So they did a bunch of studies in the 70s with pigeons, and what they found was that what was most addictive to these birds was an unpredictable, intermittent, variable reward, which is so weird because you'd think, hey, if I know I'm going to get this reward every time I do something, I'm going to do it over and over and over. But that's not necessarily the case. When it's unpredictable, you don't know when you're going to get it. You don't know at what interval you're going to get it, and you don't know the size of the reward. That's when you really start putting nickels in and pulling that slot over and over and over. And then next thing you turn around, you go, my God, it's daytime outside. I've been here for 7 hours straight. I've had 27 beers and the sun's coming up. I might have a problem, but that's what it is with your smartphone, because think about it. Did I get a text? Did I get an email? Is it an interesting email? Or is it junk mail? Oh, it's a good email. Oh, I want to check. I was waiting for this. You go to Facebook, anything, no notifications. Damn it. Did I get any comments? Did I get any likes? No? Okay. 2 minutes later. Anything now? Anything? And so, and that's based upon that whole concept of intermittent, variable, unpredictable rewards, because our brain is just like, somebody said this. I think you and I have talked about this before, but somebody said that smartphones are like the new version of opening up your fridge and hoping that you see something new in there to eat that wasn't there the last time, you know? But that's what it is. You're just like anything, anything, anything. And that model is intentional. It was specifically engineered, and it's got us trapped because our brains automatically want to see if there's anything there that wasn't there the last time. It's crazy.
Listen, and it's evolving too. That whole concept is evolving. And I'll tell you how it's evolving, because I have recently in this quarantine have opened up a TikTok, like most 30 and 40, 50-year-old parents, to try to bombard the millennials and push them out. And the hole that you actually go into in TikTok is 10 times bigger than Facebook. And that is not made up statistic. You will literally sit there and scroll through TikTok. And I'm telling you, I've been on that thing where 30, 40 minutes have gone by, and I'm just one after another. And I started looking into it, and their algorithm is a really, really unique algorithm in the sense that it's far superior than Facebook. And that's why you're starting to see some businesses actually open up TikTok accounts, because the viewership is so much larger than Facebook when it comes to their algorithm. And they follow very specific criteria. Like if you're a user within the first 7 to 10 days, they're going to pump you out so much stronger in those 7 to 10 days so that you can pump out videos and you can pump out users and followers in a way where, listen, my first couple of videos, I have a video on there that's been viewed 50,000 times. 50,000 times.
And what happened? Ridiculous. You're like, I am incredible, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I am a superstar.
Look at this. Yeah. That's right. And that fed you, right? They got you right off the bat.
Fed me and kept on feeding me. And I started to notice a couple key things. One, every video I put out, minimum 500 views. Okay. When have you gotten 500 views on Facebook from a random post? Never. So their viewership, they pump out these numbers and they give you these numbers, and your eyes go bigger and you want to do more. So their algorithm is evolved. They've realized everything that you're talking about, this unexpected reward, and the amount, just the amount of reward that you get is so much bigger than Facebook and Instagram. It's incredible. And they purposely did that in the algorithm. Yeah.
Aren't they? What's the length of a TikTok video? The longest.
The average length, the longest length is 60 seconds. You have the choice between 15 seconds and 60 seconds.
Right. Most people do 15 though, don't they?
Oh yeah.
That's got to factor into it, right? Because
everything factors into it.
Because then, you're like, because we have short spans of attention, right? So it's like, but I can watch this 15 seconds. Oh, that's funny. There's got to be another one, 15 seconds. It seems like you'd be exponentially less likely to watch a minute, because you want to get that snack, right?
I don't. Anything that's longer than 15 seconds, I'm like, yeah. Unless it's got to be really funny.
And then that's one of the things. That's one thing that goes against Facebook, because Facebook doesn't have any predictability as far as the length of their posts, or it's so variable. It could be a picture, it could be a video, it could be a snippet, it could be an emoticon, it could be it could be anything. Like there's so much variation, but you know what to get with TikTok, and it's just like eating Skittles, right? Just like bam, bam,
dude,
bam.
And I'm like, boom, all day long for 30 minutes. You can be on there for 30, 40 minutes. And listen, the other part of the algorithm is they will only show you videos. Like, you want to talk about personalized newsfeed, that's a personalized newsfeed. And it's personalized, because I mean, I only get I only get literally videos that are impersonations and very little dance videos because I can't dance. So I mean, but they're all impersonation videos and different things like and tutorials because I was trying to learn how to do things. So it was weird how it was so in your face, and you can tell it's a stronger algorithm when it comes to how that news feed was constructed. And I get it. I understand a little bit more why people gravitated towards that, especially during quarantine. During quarantine, man, I want to be recognized. I want gratification. I want some good feelings coming into, this really shitty situation. And
Yeah.
Facebook is nothing but people arguing on there. I want to go where all the happy people
I'm
are.
also experiencing anxiety and some depression and some uncertainty. So what can I do to boost my mood? What can I do to, and that's what it is. It's just a little bit of shot of dopamine every time, it's just kind of like bing, bing. And also the feeling of importance, and impression management, where it's like, we do care what other people think of us. And so, like it or not, even though you're being manipulated, when you go onto TikTok and you see that 20,000 people have watched this video and given you rave reviews, you swell up. And so, and that's not our fault. Like, that's part of the way that we evolved. There's a writer named Adam Alter. He says, we're social beings who can't ever completely ignore what other people think of us. And that is true, because that plays into like this deeply embedded evolutionary need that we have to be accepted and to be liked. And that's what these like buttons and follows and views, all of that plays into our deeply wired need to feel important, to feel valued, to feel recognized, to feel like we belong,
Yeah.
and that we matter. And they know that, they know that. So that's they intelligently designed that particular algorithm. It's like the like button, right? I don't think they engineered the like button to become addictive. They engineered it for other reasons, but then all of a sudden they were realizing that it became something that we craved.
Exactly. And listen, with that said, I've got a quote for you too that came from the Netflix, The Social Dilemma, which this one struck me. And it's funny that I never really put the two together, but it was, there are only two industries that call their customers users: illegal drugs, software companies.
That was a punch in the gut when I
That
heard
was
that,
a punch in the gut,
because
wasn't
I
it?
was like, holy shit, I've never even thought of that. But really, you are manipulating very similar reward pathways in the brain with social media and technology as you are with drugs. And so there is a real kind of similarity between the two. I mean, I would argue that even the
Yeah, but
worst.
that couldn't have been by accident. When software
No, I don't think it
companies
was.
were starting to develop and be created, and they started to call their consumers users, that couldn't have been an accident.
It wasn't, because a lot of these guys, I don't know if you remember from the video, but a lot of these guys went through BJ Fogg's behavioral design programs up in Stanford. So BJ Fogg is a guy who's really known for understanding behavior design. He's got this whole concept called tiny habits, and he has really monetized, or rather, no, that's not probably the right word. He understands the way that the mechanisms in the brain work, to the extent that he's been able to teach people how to leverage brain function to build a consumer base. And so they make reference to it. They don't name BJ Fogg, but what they do is they say all these guys have been through this program, and then they show a snippet of the classroom. That's BJ Fogg. So that's who that guy is. And they went there to understand behavior design. How do I construct something that people are going to want to use? Now, even BJ Fogg is not a bad guy. Like, you know, nobody's sitting there going, how do I create something that's going to, you know, that's going to take over the brains of the world that I can monetize? Nobody's doing that. But look, it's marketing, right? So like any business, whether it's arena fitness or technology companies, like, what can I say that's going to resonate with people? And how can I set this up that they're going to want to be a part of this? That's
So,
essentially what the root question is. They just
so
take it to a whole nother level by you know, integrating brain function into it.
So story brand, for example, is a popular thing that was probably created on the foundations of BJ Fogg kind of principles, is what you're saying. And story brand, just
I
so,
would
so that
say,
people understand, is a uh, program or a curriculum that is widely used amongst businesses to basically create their story and their brand, so that you're delivering the message that you want delivered to your customers.
yeah,
And that's
it's
what that
basically the
helps.
hero's journey. It's modeling the hero's journey, which is a common theme in literature and in television and in movies, and it's very appealing because there's a real structure to it. And so story brand really tells you how to create a company narrative that follows the hero's journey.
Right, right. So essentially, the story brand curriculum was, you're saying, is just built on the foundation of a lot of BJ Fogg principles.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was built on BJ Fogg or just on the principles of we know that this is a structure of narrative that appeals to people. It's in use in every TV show that you see. It's in use in every movie that you see, and there's a reason for it. And so it
Right.
is design. It's basically, you know, it's narrative design that is designed to appeal to something that is familiar to you, that you enjoy. So like I said, I don't know if it's based specifically on BJ Fogg, but look, it's intentional. Nothing's accidental. You know, when it
No.
comes to marketing, everything is intentional. I've got a question about kids, because you have kids and I don't. So where do you sit with this whole thing with regard to your kids?
Well, I sit with it in the sense that I listen, my kids, especially Ava right now, has gotten into like YouTube, and she watches these, like, kids on YouTube and stuff like that. I'm monitoring it now, because I have seen a difference in terms of what she's exposed to on YouTube, in a way where it's accelerating her growth, and it's accelerating in a growth that I don't really necessarily enjoy. Like, it's not, I don't want to see my 6-year-old acting like a 13-year-old around. That's not necessarily what I would want. And I know that that's something that's being influenced to her by the things that she's seeing on YouTube. So listen, I got off that dilemma thing, and I went straight to her laptop, and I started putting in parental restrictions and different things like that. So now she has a 30-minute cap on her YouTube shows every single day that I've been able to kind of put in there. But it was concerning. It was concerning because what does that do? Listen, there were statistics on there that you saw during the social dilemma, that you saw in 2009. There was a distinct difference in suicide rates, and suicide rates amongst 10 to 14-year-old girls. And that's frightening. That's not by accident. You're talking about like 100 plus, sometimes even 300% increase from, what was it, 2011 to 2013. That's huge, dude. That is huge. And even Anthony, I've got a 20-year-old son. When he was going through high school, I did see a little bit more of this incessant need to try to appease to the crowd via Instagram, or there was this, he was teaching me at the time where, and I don't know if you remember me telling you this, that if you tag a bunch of people, let's say you go to a party and you tag a bunch of people in the picture, but you leave one person out, that's a big FU to that person to not be tagged. And I didn't know that kids were doing that to each other. Like that was kind of like an eye-opening. That was my first eye-opening thing. Like, whoa, wait a second. You guys are taking this to a whole nother level. Like you guys are weaponizing this and using this to hurt each other in a way. It's like digital bullying in a way that I never had to experience or go through in high school. So how do you talk to your child, or anybody for that matter, around subjects that you never experienced? You know, the one thing I had against me was like, hey, I've been through high school. I know what it's like. Da, 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 da. Well, I didn't go through high school with social media. I don't know what it's like. I
Right.
have to actually
Thank God.
research this stuff. Like I have to figure it out myself so that I can sit there and troubleshoot it with you. So it's scary, man. It's scary. There's, you know, and
Yes. So to what you were just saying about like the being left off of a message or not being tagged in it. Robert Lustig wrote a book called The Hacking of the American Mind, and there's a quote in there that says that nearly 160,000 kids stay home from school every day because of fear of bullying. Like there's a lot of cyberbullying and stuff going on right now, and it's a real thing for the kids psychologically. There was a 2015 study by Common Sense Media that found that teenagers were consuming media, including text messaging and social work networks, 9 hours per day on average. 9 hours per day on average. And there was a 7-year study of over 4,000 teenagers that showed that total media use correlated with the prevalence of eventual depression, especially in boys. And this is just accelerating. So these are probably even outdated statistics, because these are 5 years old. But the amount of the consumption of this sort of media is resulting in all of these mental health issues for kids. And man, I don't know what I would do if I had kids, but I suspect that I would really, really limit it as much as I could, because it's very powerful. It's powerful in ways that we've never, I think, as a culture had to deal with when it comes to influencing the behavior, the mindset, the health, the mental health of our kids.
And listen, it's hard, man. It's hard, especially under these circumstances, quarantine. I'm working from home. Stacy's working from home. The easiest thing for us to do in order for, we can't bring babysitters into the house because of quarantine and stuff like that. And we don't want to be, bringing in strangers into the house, or I don't know where, I can't monitor everybody that's around. So our family pod is only so big, and we can only put so much strain on Stacy's sisters and cousins and stuff like that, and ask them to babysit from time to time. But the easiest thing for me to do is put on YouTube or put on some sort of show and stuff like that, and just have them, digital babysitter. So we've had to really take a look and strategize. At the end of the day, you just have to kind of strategize, and it's not simple. There's no simple solution to this. It's hard, man, and it puts you through the ringer in terms of being able to be creative and different things and social interactions. But I am seeing it more as a challenge than a positive challenge that will only affect my children in a positive way. Because what I'm doing is I'm teaching them. Not only am I teaching them, but listen, my kids to a certain extent are teaching me how to get back into relationship, right? Because then, with the absence of a TV monitoring you, or YouTube or anything like that, I have to strategize my schedule a whole lot more so that it's effective and it's able to coincide with my wife. And I have to think of new, inspiring, creative ways of how to interact with my children, as opposed to doing the easy thing, which is, I'm going to go take care of these 20 emails. Go ahead and watch this for a second. Just don't open up that door. That's got to be, there's got to be some damage there that's done over time. So listen, there's growth. There's potential for growth as me, as an individual, and as a person, and as a father, as a husband, and as a business owner, for me to figure this out, And I haven't completely figured it out, but there is growth there. And I don't want to be in a position, now that I know what I know, and I'm going to continue trying to research this and learn the things, the impact that this has on individuals and our communities and our society. And the only way this is going to come about is through organic individual changes of behavior. You have to take a look in the mirror and go, what do I want? Yeah. What kind of person do I want to evolve to be? And that's the only way this is going to go away. This is not, advertisement companies are not going to stop their strategies. Marketing companies are not going to stop their strategies.
We can't wait for the business to regulate itself. That worked really well with the banking industry. It's like after Glass-Steagall, and then they started doing all these junk loans and so on and so forth. The bank, the industry will police itself. No, that's what caused the recession in 2009, 2008. They're not going to police themselves. It's absurd to suggest that they would, because policing is a threat to revenue, and they're a business. We can't expect them to self-regulate.
And listen, you can go out and get a crappy loan right now. It's not like it doesn't exist.
No, it's not like it went away.
No, it didn't. You know what happened was all those people that had the crappy loans, they got screwed. So there was a punishment there. Here's the creepy part about this. We don't know we're being punished. We don't know that we're being negatively affected. So that's why this is so much scarier than bad loans being written or banks having to be regulated and stuff because they weren't regulated. This is different. This is, you don't even know something bad is happening.
That is a perfect segue into the last 30 minutes of that video, which was, that's when it really, much of what had happened up to that point was really interesting. Like, I loved watching it, but I have read books and kind of covered some of the broader strokes of the technology of it. I knew most of that, although it's always interesting to see people in the industry saying, I was the former vice president of, this giant social media company, and I don't let my kids have an iPad, and then you're like, whoa. So that was interesting. But now let's talk about exactly what you were mentioning.
Hold on, I lost your audio. Hold on. I lost your audio. Can you hear me? Hold on, wait a second. Hello?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, I got you now. All right, so go on. I'm sorry. I was missing what you were saying.
Did you hear everything that I said there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so what I was saying is, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the fact that the personalization of the content that we see as individuals influences and impacts our values, our beliefs, the way that we interact with people, and we don't even know it. And I did not know that stuff in the last 30 minutes. Now, I know that Google tracks my behavior. I know this because that's what remarketing is. If you look for a pair of shoes on Acme Shoe Store that you've never visited that website before, and then you go to your Facebook feed, you're going to see an ad from Acme Shoe Store. That's retargeting, that's remarketing. We know that. That's commonplace. But I didn't realize the extent to which the stuff that I'm exposed to reinforces my current beliefs instead of exposing me to a variety of beliefs so that I can, use a little bit of critical thinking and see different opinions on things. So in a nutshell, the way that I interpreted what they were saying is that all of these companies are tabulating our behavior, tracking our behavior, tracking our content, whether you're talking about YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, to the extent that when you then are searching for something, not only will content that is similar to what you've looked at in the past, not only will that automatically be generated to your social media feeds and such, but even if you go to Google, this is what tripped me out, man. If you go to Google, okay, so I happen to believe in climate science and climate change science. So if I Google climate change, I will get content from Google that talks about the reality and the science-based theories behind climate change. But if somebody is a committed climate change disbeliever or denier, and that is kind of how they behave online, then when they Google climate change, they're going to get climate change hoax and how much it isn't true, because that aligns with their personal beliefs. And all these search engines and social media platforms want to do is to appeal to what we like and what we believe in, and not challenge us, because that's a threat to us enjoying the experience on their platform. And so if I'm only seeing content that is already in alignment with my values and my beliefs, and somebody else who has polarized views is only seeing content that is in alignment with their cores and their core values and their beliefs, then all we're doing is getting more and more deeply entrenched in our ideology. And it's no wonder I'm having these absurd, nasty, confrontational exchanges with people on Facebook.
Absolutely.
That is the part that scared the shit out of me.
I'm going to take it a step further, because I don't know if you caught the point where there was a lady talking, this was towards the end, where she was talking about, listen, if you have the right amount of money, you can topple any government you want. You just put in ads and stuff like that. And just how Mark Zuckerberg in the beginning was talking about, well, not him specifically, but they were talking about how Facebook wanted these dials that they can just churn in, churn off. And if they wanted users in South Korea, they would just churn up the dial. Okay, we'll give you a scenario. If I want Pennsylvania to vote red, if I have enough marketing dollars, I'm only going to expose them to the ads and the advertisements that those like Trump supporters support and want, and I'm going to dial that thing up. And I'm going to buy Pennsylvania, or I'm going to buy Michigan, or I'm going to buy
anybody who says that they cannot be influenced or manipulated by what they see in the environment is absolutely incorrect. We are easily influenced by our environment, that's where the whole concept of social norms comes from. Social norms about fat people are this way and skinny people are this way, and people who are a certain color are this way, and cops are a certain color. Those are norms. Those are social norms that are embedded ideas that we have in our culture that have been passed around and supported and for so long that they just exist on their own, and we kind of just don't even question them at this point. And those all came from exposure to these ideas. I mean, look, if you put a carrot in a jar of vinegar for long enough, no matter what bite of that carrot you take, it's gonna taste like vinegar through and through, because it's been saturated with vinegar. If you live in a place where all they talk about is climate change is a hoax, masks don't work, and that's the ideology that is discussed and presented over and over and over, and you are living in that environment, you are essentially a carrot being soaked in that vinegar. And we are all, I mean, and that doesn't just go for people who are, anti-maskers and such. That goes for people who are pro-maskers. We are all massively influenced by whatever is going on around us. And to the extent that among neuroscientists and psychologists, there's actually an active debate as to whether or not we genuinely possess free will. And it's a really interesting topic.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is scary. Because immediately, you know what I say? How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true, because guess what? I have pretty much been a Democrat my entire life, fairly liberal. Ask me what my parents are. That's the environment that I grew up in. My community was made up of people that had that particular political ideology and moral and ethical ideology. And so I grew up in that environment. And so is it really a surprise that I came out with that support, with that type of belief system? Now, in all fairness, when I became old enough, when I became an adult, I did a little bit of exploration. And there were times in some elections, I actually have voted Republican, not recently, but I have voted Republican. So I did actually explore different ideologies, and I'm not totally in alignment with my family's and my parents' beliefs, but still very much so. That isn't that all pretty much always the way that it is? Don't we more often than not carry I know you may not, but a lot of people carry the same ideology, the same political beliefs, the same religion. You don't find, a kid that's raised in a particular religious environment, especially if that religious environment is very devoted and dedicated and committed. You don't find a lot of deviation from that. You don't find them following a different, ideology, religious ideology. So it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. And that was scary as shit, because then I started having to go, wow, man, I really need to, well, before I explain how I reacted to that, what was your reaction to that whole kind of recognition?
The last half hour of that.
Yeah, just, how much we're categorized, and then we're fed the meal that we've been saying that we want over and over and over, whether we, just the same meal, and we're never exposed to broccoli. We just eat carrots over and over and over,
Well, I kind of had the same response that you had when it comes to that free will research, which is F you, dude. Like, you're not going to influence my way of thinking and what I like and dislike. I want to wean myself off of that if that's what's been happening, because that almost feels like that's the mechanism that robs us of free will.
Yeah.
And listen, there are not many things in this world that that money can't buy, that are just valuable. Free will is one of those. Like, you can't buy free will. You can't go out in the corner store and get it. Everybody has it and has the right to have it. And F you for trying to steal that away from me is kind of like my thing. That was the first one. The second thing is, it gave me an aha moment, because listen, me and my father have different political views, and I'm sure every family member has one family in there that has, one family that's just a disruptor. That's my dad. Okay. I have tried to have conversations with him from a political standpoint over the last couple of years that it feels like a brick wall, and it bothers me. And one of the things that I always ends the conversation to me is, listen, Dad, if you can't talk to me without spitting out a talking point every 30 seconds and have an authentic conversation with me about something, I don't want to have it. Let's talk about something else. Because all I'm hearing is, the Fox 11 newscaster that was on an hour ago that I just listened to, and now you're spitting out the same information to me. I want to hear something different, because all you're doing is it's rhetoric.
Right.
And it was always something that was confusing to me, that I think for the first time I sat there and go, oh, that's why we can't hear each other. We're not getting the same information. We're not diverse like that. We haven't been exposed to the same world, the same California, the same Los Angeles, the same United States, the same president. We haven't been exposed to the same president for the last 4 years. And a couple things went through. Empathy. I started to understand a little bit more. And I started to get less angry almost immediately, because this whole, why the hell don't you understand why this is a mask is going to save your life or save other people's life? Why is it such a difficult, why is this politicized? Or why is it that you don't understand the scientific nature of climate change, or whatever it is, whatever you pick it is. I started to understand. Now, I'm not saying my views are right and the other person's wrong. I just had more insight as to why there's a debate.
Yeah.
And it gave me less anxiety. I got to tell you, it gave me less anxiety. But I can't stop there and be like, oh, now I understand. I have to do something further. I have to start to practice certain behaviors, like taking the notification off and not being exposed to things, so that I can start to do my part. so I can start to do the, the digital mask. And if we're going to use an analogy, I have to start to wean myself off these platforms so that I can start to develop my own behaviors that are authentic based upon the things that I'm exposed to and the things that I read and stuff like that. Really get back to more of an authentic way of living, and really understand what place YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok have in our lives, and start to really have an open conversation with people in your community about it. I think even having this conversation with you is something that we should continue to have with members of Arena Fitness and members of our family, so that we can have an open debate as far as like, wait a second, we were given these things like Facebook and YouTube and Yahoo and Google without any instruction on how to use it, with no rules whatsoever. We were given these, in a lot of ways, guns with no preparation. It's time to start, talking about what the rules should be. It's time to start implementing some sort of self-regulation with all those things. Always, it's just the same thing that we've been frustrated over for the last 5 years, which is the arguing, the debating, the conflict, the anxiety, the stress. That's going to get worse. And if for the first time I started to realize, oh, this is a way to get out of this. This is a possible scenario. This is a possible answer for everybody's just frustration and confusion as to why, one of their family members just doesn't get it, or why the other side views life the way they do. There is no other side. We're all one freaking human race. We're one side, and somehow we got divided, and we got divided hard in 2009 when the evolution of Facebook and all these social media platforms started to hit. And there's evidence of that. There's evidence of that. So that's kind of how that last half of everything kind of hit me.
Yeah, so for me, it was very similar, and it was actually it explained a lot of why I was having such conflicts with people that I've known for years and that I love.
Mm-hmm.
These are good people. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I cannot understand why you feel this way. And I'm kind of stunned. And I guarantee you they feel the same way about me. And so what I had begun to do recently is just try to be empathetic to that, and understand that they truly believe what they believe because they believe it to be the best thing, and that they have the best of intentions and they want the best for everybody. And they think that I'm just as off the mark as I think they are. And so I was kind of trying to orchestrate some conversations that were more understanding, and say, listen, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to respect you. I'm not going to agree with you necessarily, but I will listen and I will respect. And I'm going to ask the same from you, because part of what I see happening that I think is the result of people getting their news from social media, which is not a good idea, is this kind of concept of my side, my team is 100% right. Your team is 100% wrong. If that is ever the situation, there's a problem, because that is never the reality. And I think we need to recognize that none of us are 100% right, and that we have to be able to have these conversations. But I feel like we've been being pushed farther and farther and farther apart. And a lot of it, I do feel like, is manipulation by the content that we're being shown through technology. And I don't necessarily think that it's turning us into robots, but it's definitely nudging. It's nudging us, it's influencing us, and it's manipulating us in ways that we don't even know. So what are some of the solutions here? One of the things I wrote down was, how would our lives look different if we rerouted our attention away from social media, television, the internet, and actually lived in the world? That's probably a whole other conversation, but I think that if we reallocated the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day that we spend on these platforms to something else, we would find a greater sense of fulfillment. I truly do believe that. I don't believe that we need to completely abdicate use of these tools, but I think there does need to be some framework around it. So like solutions, like what do we do? Because it's one thing to have this conversation about all the things that are problematic, but then it's another thing to say, okay, now what do we do about it? So I don't know if you have some ideas, but I wrote some down. One of the ideas from Indistractable, the book, is the 10-minute rule. If I want to check it, whatever it is, Facebook, social media, whatever, I'll tell myself it's fine, but not right now. I have to wait 10 minutes. That's actually an example of what's called delayed gratification, which has been shown to work even with eating, where it's like, I want this donut. I'm not going to deny myself, because if I deny myself, I'm going to even want it more because of deprivation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm not going to eat this donut now, but I'm going to give my permission to eat it in 30 minutes if I still want it. And a lot of the time when you circle back 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later, you no longer feel the need to eat that donut. You no longer feel the need to check your social media platform. So the 10-minute rule, I think, is a good starting point. Maybe time blocking, time boxing, to give yourself, all right, listen, from 1 to 2, I'm gonna fucking scroll,
Yeah.
that's whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, but you're putting some framework around it, so that you're not all of a sudden you are setting up the terms of the agreement. You're not getting pulled into this thing, and you're lost and you're out of control, and then you finally wake up and pull yourself out and you go, my God, what just happened? You're actually saying, between 1 and 2, I'm going to go on. I'm going to check my Facebook, my social media, my Instagram, and whatever, and I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do. But at 2 o'clock, I'm out. So I think time blocking is an interesting one. I do think removing notifications is like the first step that people should have. Really minimize the ones that you need, so that you're not constantly responding to these prompts that you're getting. I think one of the things that I'm going to do is, the other thing is, I only have social media apps on some of my devices. I have it on my phone, but I don't have it on my iPad. And so that way, when I'm using my iPad, I'm not tempted to, because I read on my iPad, I'm not tempted to deviate. And the other thing I'm going to do, I think, is just experiment and take a week off each month from social media, and just see how it occurs. I mean, is it worth it? Do I notice a difference? Do I not notice a difference? I got to tell you, I stopped Sunday night, so I'm going to go a week without checking social media, Facebook, Instagram. I go on Twitter like hardly ever, but none of my social platforms. And I got to tell you, I don't really notice. Like, so far, it's like not a big deal. Like, I was expecting to go, man, this feels great. I feel like a new man. I don't. It's only been 3.5 days, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing, that it doesn't feel like it's an earth-shattering change in my life. I think what it shows me is I'm not sure how much I need it. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you earlier too, is do we really need to be on social media? And I feel like, circling back to what you said, I do feel like there are some necessities from a business perspective, but I don't know that I have to have a personal Facebook profile. I don't know that I have to have a personal Instagram profile, although I do like to use those as mechanisms for pumping out what I believe to be educational material. So anyway, those were just some of the ideas that I wrote down, like the 10-minute rule. Take the apps off of your devices that you don't want to be distracted from. Maybe take a week off a month. Do things in batches, like time box it or time batch it, where you have designated times to check your social media platforms. That's kind of what I have as some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that, as far as like, if you're on Facebook primarily, join groups, set up if you use Facebook for friends, then put your friends in a group and just go to the group. Don't go on the newsfeed.
That's actually a really good idea. That way you don't get dragged into all this other crap.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the best way to find out who your friend is. And this is something I have a rule for, is very rarely will you see me say happy birthday to somebody on Facebook. I text that person if they're my friend. I make it a point. Now, Facebook might remind me that it's their birthday, and then I put them in my calendar at that point. But I make sure that I always text my friends as opposed to doing that on Facebook. I think it's a lot more personal. That's kind of like my own personal thing about it. And it helps me, you know, I don't know. I think it's more genuine if there's a text than something that's just done on Facebook. And then you'll figure out who your friends are and put those people in the group, you know, and that's the way you kind of construct that group is to do it that way. And that would be my major suggestion is to do things like that. And just kind of figure, you know, time blocking and take the apps off that you don't need. Do an app audit on your phone, you know, audit your phone and take all the apps that you don't need off of there and then go from there. And then make it a point to call somebody that you haven't talked to at least once a month or once a week. You know, pick up the phone. You know, don't have conversations all the time. If you have to text somebody more than 3 lines, if it's more than 3 lines, I have a 3-line rule.
Pick up the phone.
You pick up the freaking phone, man.
Yeah.
You pick up the phone and you call. Okay. That would be a big thing for me too. Is more than 3 lines on the text message. Call me.
Yeah, no, it's that actually makes a lot of sense. And I like the idea of creating groups. And you know, I know Facebook's really been promoting their groups lately too. I mean, that is another thing that is good about Facebook is finding those actual groups that have, you know, I like flying kites. All right, well, go to the kite group and then you get to like interact with people about something you care about. There's value to that. You know, I think there's value to that. And I would also just say, you know, caution yourself against deriving your news from social media, because chances are it's going to just be slanted in favor of what you already believe. Maybe spend a little bit of time watching the other network. I did that recently. I spent some time watching the network that is, you know, the opposite of what I normally watch. And it was tough sledding, you know, it was tough sledding because I was like, wow. But, you know, that's what they would say if, you know, they watched my news channel of choice. And so I think there's some value in spending a little bit of time on the other side of the line just to get an understanding of why is it, you know?
You have to though, John. Like in my opinion, you're not allowed to have a conversation about any political topic unless you've heard the other side.
Yeah,
because
just listen.
Just listen. And if you can't stand it, if you can't put yourself through that, then don't engage in political talks online.
Right.
Okay. Because listen, unless you're able to listen to one conversation, listen to the other conversation, the truth is somewhere in the middle. If you ever want to get to the truth, you have to have the other side of it. So if you're sitting there advocating whatever side you're on, and you're having these political arguments going, this is the truth, this is the truth, this is truth, F you if you haven't heard the other side. You don't know what the truth is, because the truth only exists when you listen to both sides. The truth is in the middle. Okay.
Right. It's always in the middle. It might be on one side, but it's in the middle. It's never here or here. And that's the problem right now, is that everybody believes this is my side. Everything here is 100% correct and everything over here is wrong, and vice versa. And that's terrible, man. I mean, it feels like it's that way in a way that I've never seen in my life. And maybe that's not true, but that's the way it feels. And I know a lot of my interactions with people have been along those lines. So, yeah, I think we need to be more willing to consider, just look at it, what the other person thinks. Just listen.
Yeah. If you're
You
going
don't
to
have to come out of that conversation agreeing with them, but just listen so that you understand why they feel that way. That's what empathy is. Empathy is understanding somebody else's feelings, beliefs, actions, and values without becoming a part of it. It's just understanding and acknowledging it. You don't have to get dragged into it or change your views, but you just listen, acknowledge, and understand without becoming a part of it. And that's what empathy is.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
All right, we went long.
It's a big topic, man. It's a big topic. I don't know how you would squeeze this in anything short of what we squeezed in. So.
All right.
All right, brother.
Well, hopefully we will have that Sunday morning event. Hopefully we'll be able to do the kettlebell event Sunday morning, starting a My Zone challenge too on Sunday, which will be cool.
Yeah.
And hopefully the air is going to continue to clear up here in LA, and the fires are going to go away, and everything will get better.
Yeah, man. One step at a time, one conversation at a time.
Yep, for sure.
All right.
All right, brother.
All right, brother.
See you, man.
Have a good one, man. Happy
You too.
Thursday.
Yep.